Over 50? 4 breakfast foods exposed as unhealthy and 4 hidden gems. You must eat. Transform your mo. Joan stood in her kitchen, the familiar scent of sizzling sausages melding with the warm aroma of maple syrup. This was her haven. Sunlight poured in, illuminating family photos, flour-dusted countertops, and her cast-iron skillet, the embodiment of years filled with love. Each pancake flipped was a promise, a gesture that spoke louder than words. I care. But the glow of maternal pride faded as she caught her reflection in the microwave's glass. The subtle rounding of her shoulders, the softening of her stomach, were those signs of age or something more? Her morning bliss shattered when her grandson Alex, a newly minted nutritionist, stepped into her sanctuary. The worry etched on his brow made her pulse quicken. "Grandma," he began hesitantly, "I've been meaning to talk about breakfast." The enthusiasm she'd anticipated was replaced with a sinking feeling that unfurled in her chest. Alex pointed out the sugar content in her homemade syrup and the grease in her sausages, each word striking like a hammer. A wave of shame washed over her. "But Alex, these recipes have been in our family for generations. How can I change that?" she stammered, feeling the clash of pride and vulnerability spark a tidal wave of doubt. Sitting at the local diner later, surrounded by her breakfast buddies, she felt the weight of scrutiny. "You can't take away our traditions, Joan," they laughed, but their playful taunts hit her harder than she expected. The fear shrieked in her mind. What if, in her efforts to embrace healthier choices, she lost her identity as the perfect grandmother? She glanced down at her coffee, trembling hands barely steadying the cup. The delicious irony of her situation gnawed at her, a woman cradling tradition that now felt heavy, constricting. Her mind raced, darting between memories of family gatherings filled with laughter, warm embraces, and overflowing pancakes. What did it mean to love if it inadvertently harmed the very people she aimed to nourish? Suddenly, the aromas of breakfast felt like chains binding her to a past she feared was no longer sustainable. Could her beloved rituals be a disservice? She chewed her lip, fuming with internal conflict. Could she challenge her established routines? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Joan's resolve hardened the more she considered Alex's proposal. But facing the shift felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Would she take the plunge and dive into a new world where pancakes were replaced by avocado toast? Her friend's laughter echoed in her thoughts, a reminder of how rapidly things could disintegrate. The reminiscence of Sunday rituals wrapped around her like an old favorite sweater, warm and familiar, but now suffocating. She inhaled sharply, knowing she needed to prepare for the gathering, feeling like every layer peeled away brought her closer to losing something sacred. Could she balance her family's legacy with her own evolving story? The kitchen seemed to vibrate under the weight of her indecision, and as she choked back a rising wave of anxiety, she rolled up her sleeves, determined to face her culinary fate, knowing full well that defining that fate was a heart-wrenching challenge yet to unfold. In the days that followed, Joan felt as if she were trapped in a whirlpool of thoughts, swirling around her resolve like leaves caught in a storm. Each morning, the sun would rise, casting its golden light on her routine, yet an undeniable shadow crept into her kitchen. The smell of the sizzling sausage, once comforting, now felt tainted, as if every bite was a reminder of an unwillingness to change. Determined to understand the science behind nutrition, Joan began educating herself. The piles of cookbooks and articles stacked on her kitchen counter testified to her commitment. Quinoa, chia seeds, almonds, these were no longer foreign words, but ingredients she yearned to incorporate. Despite her initial apprehension, a flicker of excitement ignited within her, urging her to experiment. Could cooking become another medium through which she expressed love, albeit in a healthier way? One evening, armed with newfound knowledge, Joan decided to recreate her traditional pancake recipe. But instead of white flour, she reached for whole wheat. When she tasted the mix, the slight nutty flavor pleased her. "It's a start," she whispered to herself, a smile creeping across her face. Yet the real test loomed, the upcoming family brunch. How would Alex react? Would her friends see her efforts as a betrayal? As the day approached, anxiety clawed at her. She spent a sleepless night imagining the skepticism in her friends' eyes, the inevitable critique of her culinary metamorphosis. What if they hate it? Her thoughts echoed, clawing at her resolve. But intertwined with her fear was an undeniable desire for transformation, for her kitchen to evolve alongside her. Finally, the morning of the brunch dawned. Joan stood before her stove, feeling the weight of the spatula in her hand. With every pancake she flipped, memories flooded back, her children's laughter, the joy of feeding her family, all dressed in the nostalgia of her past. Yet today, the focus shifted away from tradition into a realm of innovation. She placed her whole wheat pancakes alongside a vibrant fruit medley, drizzled with a homemade syrup made with agave. Her heart pounded as her friends arrived, chattering away with a mix of excitement and curiosity. Would they even notice the difference? One by one, they settled around the table, and as she served her creation, the room fell silent, the anticipation tangible. "Wow, Joan," one friend exclaimed, fork poised midair. "These look different." Joan's stomach rolled with unease, her palms clammy as she awaited their judgment. But as they took their first bites, laughter erupted around the table. "Delicious!" another friend chimed, surprising Joan with their genuine enthusiasm. Each positive comment chipped away at her fears, transforming them into a warmth spread throughout her being. They began swapping stories of food substitutions, reminiscent of family dynamics where love and food intertwined. As the brunch unfolded, she found herself reveling in this new shared experience, an understanding blossoming that change could be welcomed rather than resisted. A smile danced on her lips, banishing the specter of doubt. Joan felt herself expanding, her identity shifting from the traditional grandmother to a facilitator of healthy choices, all while still upholding the love her meals embodied. However, scattered among her newfound confidence lurked an undeniable truth. This was just the beginning. A voice within urged her to confront deeper challenges and the echo of traditions that still lingered. That night, as she prepared for bed, Joan opened Alex's nutrition book once more, and for the first time reflected on her future. What other changes awaited her? The thoughts surged like electricity. This journey towards health and identity was far from over. The moment of truth would only arrive when she tackled the unexamined corners of her culinary legacy. The time had come to face the real questions that had yet to be addressed. What else might need to change? And even more crucially, what legacy did she truly want to leave? In the following days, the taste of those whole wheat pancakes lingered in Joan's memory like a sweet echo, a gentle reminder of the strides she'd made. Yet their success brought with it an unexpected pressure. She had tasted acceptance, but the shadows of her old habits still danced at the edges of her mind. What other culinary traditions in her life needed a reformation? Driven by this questioning, Joan sat at her kitchen table one morning, reviewing Alex's book with a renewed vigor. Each tip and guideline felt like a puzzle piece waiting to fit into her evolving lifestyle. It wasn't just about changing food. It was transforming the very essence of her meals and the memories they created. This realization set the tone for her next phase. She wasn't merely adjusting her diet, she was redefining who she was. Intrigued by this evolution, Joan decided to make the leap into meal planning, an endeavor that had once seemed daunting. She spent hours sketching out meals for the week, carefully selecting a range of nutritious foods. Avocado toast, smoothie bowls, and vegetable stir-fries began to crowd her list. Vibrant colors reminded her of the potential for joy and energy that these foods promised. But with each selection came voices from her past. "It's too complicated," they whispered. "Just keep things as they are." These doubts threatened to unearth a wave of nostalgia for the simpler, albeit less healthy days of cooking. Still, Joan had begun to glimpse the rewards of her efforts, and now she wanted more than just the thrill of those pancakes. Months passed, and Joan faced an undeniable truth. She needed accountability. If her newfound lifestyle goals were to solidify, she needed a community of like-minded individuals. With determination, she joined a local health-focused group. The thought stirred a mix of excitement and trepidation in her gut. Would her peers embrace her new path or challenge her? The first meeting revealed an array of faces, each beaming with aspirations. As stories were shared, Joan listened intently, absorbing each journey and struggle. She felt a surge of companionship wash over her. Everyone in the room craved change just like she did. Yet deep within, a flicker of insecurity ignited. Could she truly claim her place among these passionate individuals, or would they see her as an imposter, someone only now realizing the importance of health? Fueled by a newfound sense of belonging, Joan volunteered to lead a cooking demonstration at their next gathering. This decision sent tremors of exhilaration mixed with fear through her. She would be stepping into the limelight, sharing her knowledge, and potentially facing judgment. As the preparation for the event began, panic set in. Was she prepared enough? Would her skills hold up in front of a room of seasoned advocates for healthy eating? Each practice run felt like a test of her fortitude. The kitchen became both her sanctuary and her battleground. She practiced relentlessly, reminding herself of her ongoing journey. Each chop of vegetables, every sprinkle of spices became a declaration that she was ready. This moment could cement her new identity or unravel the seams of her confidence. Finally, the evening arrived, and she gathered with her peers in a warm, inviting space. The kitchen buzzed with anticipation. Her fingers trembled as she laid out her ingredients. While interacting with her audience, Joan felt a blend of empowerment and vulnerability ripple through her. Then came the moment of truth, as she lifted a forkful of her creation, a colorful quinoa salad, and held it before the group. The room fell silent as she met their eyes, a shared energy pulsing in the air. It was a pivotal moment, one where she could either retreat back to her past or boldly embrace this new path ahead. In this climate of both support and scrutiny, Joan realized that this was a defining chapter in her life. As the first bite was taken and the flavors mingled with their reactions, she held her breath, conscious of one undeniable truth. The legacy she was carving out was now on display, and she was terrified of what they might think as they savored her effort. What would their reactions reveal about not only her cooking, but her identity? Would she understand that her journey was valid, regardless of their judgment? What awaited her in the daunting depths of self-discovery lay yet uncharted. Would the taste of acceptance be sour or sweet? As the quiet murmur of forks clinking against plates filled the room, Joan's heart raced in tandem with the anticipation swirling around her. The moment was electric. Reactions flickered across faces like lightning. Some appeared thoughtful, analyzing, while others savored with obvious pleasure. Each expression fed into her growing anxiety, rapidly turning the passion she had for cooking into a source of doubt. What if they hated her quinoa salad? What if this culinary venture fell flat before her very eyes, unearthing the old fears of inadequacy she thought she had buried? In the recesses of her mind, a persistent whisper nagged, "You're an amateur. You don't belong." She planted her feet firmly, willing her body to exude confidence while her thoughts spiraled. Suddenly, one of the participants, a sharp-eyed woman with a vibrant headscarf, leaned forward, a bright smile emerging. "Joan, this is incredible. You've really captured the flavors." The compliment landed like a lifeline, cutting through Joan's swirling self-doubt. Encouraged, she engaged with the others, introducing the ingredients, explaining the nutritional benefits of each component, how the chickpeas packed protein and the tomatoes thrived with antioxidants. As she spoke, she marveled at how naturally the information poured from her lips. She was shedding light on her reinvented identity. After the demonstration, the group broke into smaller clusters for discussions. Not about the food alone, but about habits and transformations, personal journeys intertwined with taste. Joan drifted toward a particularly insightful conversation about emotional eating, feeling the resonance of shared experiences. Here were stories that echoed the disquiet she often felt, moments of vulnerability laid bare in the light of aspiration. Something began to shift within her. Joan's defensiveness started to ebb as the realization dawned. Her past didn't define her. She was not just an amateur, but a cultivator of change, even if she had just embarked on this path. Her heart swelled with the magnetism of communion, and bit by bit, she reclaimed the space that had almost felt foreign. The evening ended with several encouraging exchanges and an unexpected invitation to contribute a recipe for the group's monthly newsletter. The idea both thrilled and terrified her. This could amplify her voice, but it could also expose the inadequacies she still felt burdened with. Back home, as she reflected on the night's events, an epiphany unfurled within her. She was surrounded by people who understood that growth required messiness. What was the worst that could happen if she laid her skills bare? There was empowerment in recording and sharing her evolution, both in cooking and life. With newfound determination, Joan began drafting her contribution, pouring her thoughts onto the page. With each word, she transformed a deeply personal experience into a guide for others, holding the potential to inspire. She felt vulnerable, yet liberated, a paradox she now embraced fully. As dawn broke the next day, she read over her draft. It reflected more than just recipes. It encapsulated her growth and spirit. Yet lingering beneath the thrill of completion was an unsettling question. What if she opened up too much? Would her journey be received with empathy, or would it be met with judgment? In this volatile blend of vulnerability and courage, she felt the chilling thrill of fear intertwining with the hope of acceptance, a duality of personal growth that she had yet to fully comprehend. What lay ahead was not just an exploration of food, but a challenge to reveal herself unapologetically. The decision was simple yet monumental. She would send the draft. But with it came the understanding that laying her soul bare often unveiled unforeseen challenges. Little did she know, the feedback from that newsletter would serve as a catalyst in her journey, turning her burgeoning identity into a crucible of both growth and conflict as she encountered opinions that would shake her new foundations to the core. Joan had never been a fan of social media, but her transformation had nudged her towards it, an unwelcome yet intriguing companion in her journey. After sending her draft to the newsletter, which she now felt was a reluctant expression of her deeper self, she hesitantly decided to create her own Instagram account. The idea was more than just sharing pictures of her meals. It was about crafting a narrative around her cooking and the life lessons hidden within. With a few deep breaths, she navigated the platform, the vibrant posts of established food influencers bombarding her screen. Each post was a window into curated lives, masterpieces of culinary art accompanied by hashtags that screamed confidence. Joan found herself questioning, did she even belong in this realm? Could her voice, fraught with self-doubt, resonate with an audience seeking inspiration? As she uploaded her first post, an aesthetically pleasing photo of her quinoa salad with an inviting caption detailing the personal journey behind it, her stomach twisted, uncertainty crashing over her like a tidal wave. What if no one cared? What if the fear, the vulnerability she felt, was met not with support, but with ridicule? Her inner dialogue was relentless. Mantra-like thoughts ran the circuits of her mind. You're just starting out. How can you compete? But, emboldened by the previous night's experience, she reminded herself that growth comes from sharing one's truth, however messy it might be. A few days passed, and her initial post received a steady stream of likes. However, it was the comments that caught her attention. A new follower, a woman in her 60s, shared her own struggles with diet and body image. Their exchange drew Joan deeper into the world she longed to belong to. This was no longer about just food. It was about connectivity, vulnerability, and the shared experience of navigating life's unpredictabilities. Imbued with a sense of purpose, Joan began documenting more of her cooking experiences, blending stories of her past with the recipes she created. Each post became a patchwork quilt of her history, fertile ground for growth, revelations, and honest conversations with her audience. Yet, with every like and encouraging comment surfaced an old habit: second-guessing herself. Whenever someone shared their gratitude or offered encouragement, she felt a twinge of disbelief, as if waiting for the inevitable backlash that never came. Then came the inevitable. A comment appeared beneath her post. "You should stick to salads and leave the real cooking to the professionals." Joan's heart sank. The words echoed the old narratives. "You're just an amateur." Inside her, a voice simmered, wrestling with anger and insecurity. Would she let this response derail her journey? Deep breaths became her compass. She took a moment to reset. There was a choice before her: give in to the stinging criticism or stoke the fire of determination ignited by the encouragement she had been receiving. Joan chose the latter. She crafted a thoughtful reply, inviting constructive feedback and reflecting on her own learning process. In that moment, Joan realized the power of resilience, not just in cooking, but in life. Each interaction, each dish prepared, was a keystone in her identity. Though taunts and doubts would come, she began to understand that they needed not define her resolve. Instead, they could serve as fuel. As the sun dipped below the horizon that same evening, casting a warm glow in her kitchen, Joan decided to host an online cooking session. This would not just be another culinary demonstration. It would be a space for vulnerability, where she would invite others to join in and share their experiences with food and transformation. But there was a lingering question that shadowed her determination. What if she faced harsher criticism during the live session? The thought sent a chill down her spine, but with it came the realization that perhaps embracing the challenge was the very essence of her journey. Each slice of feedback would be a path back to understanding her worth. With her heart set and a hint of trepidation, Joan prepared for the live session that could either solidify her budding identity or shatter it altogether. The moment loomed, heavy with anticipation. What was she really prepared to face? Joan clicked the button to go live. Her heart thudded in her chest as the screen transformed from a static image to a vibrant connection with her unknown audience. The initial stream of viewers fluctuated as they tuned in, her mind racing with possible scenarios. Would someone criticize her technique? Would they notice her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the ingredients? "Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here," she began, forcing a smile that felt more supportive than genuine. As she looked into the camera, she envisioned the faces behind the screen. Some were eager learners, others more seasoned cooks offering mentorship, and maybe a few lurking critics. Joan steadied her breathing and moved into the first recipe, an energizing smoothie bowl. She shared her thought process, discussing how the ingredients and flavors reflected choices that encouraged health and joy. As she blended the fruits, she opted for vulnerability, sharing her journey not just with cooking, but with embracing herself. Cooking, while often perceived as a technical skill, is deeply personal, she spoke, fusing her explanation with anecdotes from her childhood, recalling the kitchen as a battleground for confidence. Each story crafted a bridge with her audience, and slowly she felt warmth instead of fear. Then it happened. A comment flashed across the screen. "What gives you the right to call yourself a cook?" The words stung, slicing through her momentum. She felt a familiar heat rise in her chest. Wasn't this why she hesitated to take the plunge, to risk exposure? The old scripts of inadequacy played in her mind, whispering that she was still just an amateur with no claim to authority. But in that pivotal moment, she found an unexpected clarity. The voice inside her, nurtured by the encouragement of the supportive comments she had received before, resonated louder, challenging the negativity. Joan recalled her willingness to engage and handle criticism thoughtfully. "I'm just here to share what I love," she replied, her fingers crafting words that transformed frustration into invitation. "We all have our own unique journeys in the kitchen. Your expertise is welcome here too." The comment garnered reaction, sparking a thread where fellow viewers began sharing their culinary experiences. Joan's initial trepidation birthed a vibrant discussion that enveloped her session in positivity. Each subsequent recipe flowed more freely as she built off that energy, and she began to embody her role, not just as a chef, but as a facilitator of connection and growth. As the session drew to a close, an exhilaration began to bubble within her. The awkwardness had ebbed, replaced by a rhythm that felt natural. She had faced scrutiny. She had chosen connection over self-doubt. Yet, the aftermath held its own tension. While she experienced a surge of confidence, an unsettling question remained. Had she truly moved beyond the shackles of her past perceptions, or was this merely a temporary reprieve? As the live session ended and the chat faded, her heart swelled with triumph, but shadows of self-questioning loomed. What if the next time she faced criticism, it cut deeper? What if the next episode brought challenges that tested her resolve far beyond fleeting comments? Joan leaned back in her chair, her eyes flickering to the camera still recording, and she began to ponder her next steps. It was time for something more intimate, more raw. She realized that a deeper connection awaited her, a chance for reflection that could change not just her cooking, but the very essence of her path. As she formulated the ideas for her next session, the thrill of uncertainty surged. What lay beyond her current exploration? Would she be ready to dig deeper into her own vulnerabilities and secrets as an evolving cook? Or was she not even close to uncovering her full potential yet? Each fact emerged, pushing her toward the edge of an uncharted territory, and she couldn't help but smile at the thought of discovery. Joan's next session formed in her mind like a mosaic of bold colors and flavors, reflecting both her growth and the raw undercurrents of her journey. This time, she would explore the intersection of perception and reality in healthful eating. Flashes of inspiration surged through her. Perhaps this would serve as a platform for her to shield herself from the very doubts that had haunted her since she began. As she gathered the ingredients, she could feel her hands shaking not from trepidation, but from anticipation. Would she uncover hidden gems, both in cooking and within herself? Reflecting on her previous session, Joan recognized that vulnerability had become her strength, a counter to her earlier self-doubt. The recipes shared would not just be meals, they would carry the weight of her evolving identity. "Today we're going to challenge some misconceptions," she began, her tone immediately engaging. "We're diving into breakfast, the most important meal of the day, and shedding some light on the choice of foods that may not be as healthy as we think." With each word, she embraced her newfound confidence, seeing not just an audience, but a community ready to engage with her authenticity. She wanted them to see that health wasn't merely technical cooking. It revolved around choices deeply rooted in understandings, both personal and collective. The first item on her list was something she had long considered essential: a granola found on many store shelves, adorned with the label "healthy." But as she dissected its contents, revealing sugars and preservatives, she also used the moment to share her own earlier obsession with dieting and the lengths she had once gone to in pursuing the idea of health. "I clung to labels," she admitted, recalling how easy it was to be misled by healthy-sounding food. "I thought I was making good choices, only to find that what I was consuming was sabotaging my journey instead." Joan's gaze pierced the camera, asking viewers to connect not just with what she said, but who she had become. Each food item she exposed would not only challenge popular narratives, but serve as a metaphor for the detours in her life. With each healthy food alternative she unveiled, She began to formulate a story, one of hidden gems in nutrient-rich options like chia seeds and homemade oat milk. As she spoke, she infused the recipe preparation with lessons learned over time, embracing mistakes, acknowledging the learning process, and transforming errors into wisdom. But then, as Joan transitioned to recipes, she faced an unexpected challenge. A viewer had written, "Are you sure you're the right person to talk about this? What makes you an expert?" Joan's pulse quickened. Was this criticism only slightly masked in curiosity, or were they truly questioning her abilities once again? The moment felt eerily familiar, and yet it held potential for further exploration. Shaking off the initial sting, she leaned into the discomfort. "Great question," she responded, her voice steady. "I'm not an expert in the traditional sense. I'm a seeker, just like you. We all eat, we all misspeak, and we all learn." She invited her audience deeper into her world, emphasizing the nuance of personal growth that often came with each recipe attempt, a subtle recognition that culinary mastery was less about perfection and more about evolution. What began as a moment of uncertainty transformed into an invitation for connection as she encouraged viewers to share their flawed attempts in the kitchen. The conversation started flowing, showcasing everyone's unique stories, blending into an engaging tapestry of learning. As the session concluded and she smiled at the outpouring of support, she pondered the impact of her decisions. Had this session solidified a deeper understanding of her professional identity? Or would the vulnerability she'd opened up to result in further probing from critics who thrived on insecurity? With an electric anticipation humming through her, Joan knew she would return to this platform. But this time, she wouldn't shy away from the hard questions. Instead, she would step boldly into any confrontation that arose. And as she began to outline the core aspects of her next session, filled with even more authenticity, one question lingered in her mind. How deeply could she go? What stories remained buried, waiting to be uncovered? The threshold of discovery beckoned once more. Joan sat at her kitchen table, the remnants of her previous session still fresh in her mind. The encouragement from her viewers reverberated like a warm echo in her thoughts, pushing her to dig deeper into her own insecurities. The atmosphere was electric with potential. Each ingredient before her represented not just a meal, but a step toward forging a more authentic professional identity. With determination, she crafted her next segment. Today, she intended to confront the notion of age and health. Over 50 was more than just a demographic. It was a challenge that demanded respect and understanding. Looking towards the camera, she felt the weight of both expectation and opportunity press upon her shoulders. Could she expose the ordinary yet misleading assumptions about aging and diet that often went unquestioned? As she assembled the ingredients for a hearty quinoa breakfast bowl, she thought of her own grandmother, someone who had scoffed at modern diets while savoring traditional meals. A silent warrior of health, her grandmother had thrived in her routines, proving that nourishment was not solely about what was consumed, but how it was prepared and shared. The lessons learned from that kitchen were potent, a legacy that Joan now sought to honor. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into breakfast foods specifically for those of us over 50. We will explore some common choices labeled as healthy and uncover hidden gems that really contribute to our well-being, she announced, confidence radiating from her as she readied her mixing bowls. She had prepared meticulously, yet a budding anxiety flared within her as she recalled the viewer's question from the last session. Was she capable of addressing diet and age honestly? Could she tread carefully enough to maintain her authenticity while ensuring her audience felt secure in their choices? The thought felt daunting, but also exhilarating. As Joan began to prepare, she highlighted the pitfalls of popular breakfast items like processed oatmeal packets laden with sugars. "I get it," she said, mixing the quinoa with fresh spinach and tomatoes. "We might think grabbing these packets is a time saver. But let's pull the curtain back on why they may not serve us as we age." Each aspect of the recipe became a lesson. The act of preparing wholesome, unprocessed food transformed into a metaphorical bridge between ignorance and knowledge. She detailed the significance of fiber in combating digestive issues, emphasizing how a rich breakfast could mean rejuvenation rather than just sustenance. Midway through, she posed another critical challenge. The journey gets interesting when we embrace the concept of empowerment in our choices, she urged. Rather than scrolling through the latest health trends, let's re-establish what works for our bodies as we age. Have you ever turned to that healthy smoothie only to feel sluggish afterward? Let's break free from these cycles. Joan's voice resonated with a candidness that stirred both her heart and those of her viewers. The reality of aging was often surrounded by a quiet struggle, and she was more than willing to share her own experiences. Sharing a moment of vulnerability, she mentioned her prior ownership of a cafe that aimed to cater to health trends but lost its soul in the process. For her, the journey hadn't been linear. There were lessons in failure that paved the way to success. As the session neared its conclusion, she opened the floor for questions. One viewer hesitantly typed, "But what if we've always done it this way? It feels daunting to switch things up." This was more than just a comment. It was a heartfelt moment of doubt, presenting Joan with an unmistakably personal dilemma. Let's not treat this as daunting. Let's see it as an adventure. Change is unsettling, but it can also lead to joy and discovery, she replied firmly, when inside she wrestled with her own fears about change and adaptability. How had she turned uncharted territory into a landscape ripe for growth? With the session ending, she knew today had been more than merely cooking. It was about renovation, of the mind, attitudes, and perceptions about food, especially as one ages. She had found a balance between her insecurities and her strengths, and as she prepared to sign off, a thought struck her. What would her next exploration reveal about the hidden gems buried beneath years of misleading or static information? The feeling of anticipation bubbled within her as she considered the journey ahead, eager to illuminate the shadows that lingered in perceptions of health. The stage was set for something transformative. Joan leaned back in her chair, her heart still racing from the energy of the livestream. The connection she had forged with her audience felt palpable, yet a familiar doubt crept back into her mind. The initial thrill of sharing knowledge had morphed into a nagging fear. Was she genuinely making a difference? Did she truly believe that her insights could alter perceptions molded over decades? The weight of these questions felt heavy, yet they were critical to her growth as both a person and a professional. The kitchen, with its fragrant remnants of vegetables and grains, was transforming from a mere backdrop into a symbol of her evolving identity. Days ago, she had merely thought of it as a place to prepare food. Now it represented a crucible where old beliefs were being shattered and new insights forged. The journey of personal reinvention was beginning to resonate with her deeply, and each broadcast peeled back a layer of her psyche that had once felt impenetrable. After the session, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. In seeking to empower others, was she not also seeking to empower herself? The viewer's questions had unlocked a door inside her, one that she had kept firmly shut for far too long. Change is unsettling, she had said. It was a realization that struck her as more profound than she initially grasped. Perhaps she had allowed uncertainty to trap her, clinging to what was familiar, even when it no longer served her well. In response to the heartfelt concern of the viewer, Joan had confidently framed change as an adventure. Yet today, she questioned whether she was truly ready to embrace that adventure herself. With that thought lingering in her mind, she began mapping out her next segment, a deep dive into the world of snacks and their often overlooked role in health for those over 50. This time, she needed to ground her insights in research, swayed by the idea that knowledge could bring about action. That evening, she gathered research articles and statistics, filling the table with a spread of papers that mirrored her previous culinary creations. Snacks, often dismissed as mindless munching, cradled hidden complexities about diets and health that she wanted to illuminate. She was coming to realize that food choices were never trivial, especially when it came to age and vitality. As she sifted through the materials, her mind buzzed with ideas. What if she could create a segment that not only challenged the notion of snack time, but also framed it as an integral part of overall nutrition? Joan envisioned colorful, nutrient-rich options that contrasted sharply with the usual sugary or salty fare typically marketed to her demographic. Could she uncover the secret benefits of foods that added value rather than detracted? The challenge was not merely academic, it touched on her personal stake in the matter. Joan meticulously blended professional insight with her quest to promote healthier lifestyles. But would her audience also accept these revelations about their beloved snacks? The uncertainty loomed, juxtaposing her newfound ambitions against the apprehension of public reception. As she worked late into the night, her excitement for this new subject began to morph into a blend of anxiety and exhilaration. Deep down, she craved the validation of her ideas, yet feared the potential backlash from those who might resist change. Hadn't she learned from her past failures that not every idea shines on its first attempt? Suddenly, a new message pinged on her phone. It was a direct message from a viewer who had participated in the previous broadcast. "I appreciate your honesty, but it leaves me wondering, what if our old habits feel like a safety net? Are we willing to dismantle them?" The question swirled in her mind, offering both a challenge and a call to action. Her journey was poised at a crucial juncture, one that merged personal revelation with professional ambition. As she equipped herself for the next chapter, both on-screen and in her life, Joan understood that to inspire authentic change, she would first need to confront her own vulnerabilities. Could she be the catalyst not just for food choices, but also for a shift in mindset that included torn safety nets? With renewed clarity, she envisioned her next segment and the impact it could have, propelling her towards an uncomfortable yet necessary unseen horizon. Was she prepared not just to illuminate, but to lead a charge against complacency? The stakes felt tangible, and the ache of anticipation simmered in her chest as she positioned herself at the cusp of transformation. Joan sat in her kitchen, and everything felt different. The sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating not just the countertops, but the journey she had undertaken, a journey that had thrust her into the very heart of her identity. The last few sessions had sculpted her into someone she previously believed she could never be, a confident voice for healthy living after 50. It was no longer a mere culinary endeavor, it was an assertion of her power, a transformation deeply rooted in authenticity. In preparation for her next session, she reflected on the comments from her audience. One particular message rang true. What if our old habits feel like a safety net? Joan felt that tugging sensation in her chest. She understood the fear of letting go. Just weeks ago, she had stood at the edge of that precipice herself, caught between composting family recipes and evolving into a healthier version of herself. Today, she would talk about snacks, those little moments of indulgence that often belied the deeper truth of nourishment. She pulled out her notes, ready to pivot traditional perceptions. Her plan was to highlight the importance of healthy snack choices while gently confronting the fear of change that many of her viewers shared. Greetings, everyone. Today, we're delving into the world of snacks, Joan announced as the camera flickered to life. The familiar butterflies danced in her stomach, but she embraced them. Our habits form safety nets, but they can inadvertently limit our potential for vitality. Let's explore snacks that empower us instead. Joan dove into familiar territory, explaining the nutritional powerhouses of raw nuts, seeds, and vibrant fruit. She articulated how these choices could invigorate rather than drain energy. Each recipe was celebrated, not just for its nutritional value, but for its capacity to transform ideas about snacking. In her descriptions, she weaved personal anecdotes about her struggles and victories, demonstrating that the journey was indeed more enriching when shared. Then, she addressed the elephant in the room. "I understand how change can feel daunting," she said with sincerity. "I've wrestled with my own habits. But perhaps instead of viewing these traditions as barriers, we can see them as launch pads. Let's recreate an experience that aligns with our goals. As she crafted a healthy banana oat energy ball recipe, Joan noticed the chat becoming more interactive, with viewers chiming in on their experiences, frustrations, and successes. She felt electrified. The shared vulnerabilities fostered a sense of community, a group rediscovering their place in the world of healthy snacks together. Toward the end of the session, the questions poured in. One viewer asked, "What if I don't like healthy options? How can I change that?" Joan paused, realizing the embodiment of her journey was being mirrored in others. Each person faced a turning point. They too were on the brink of transformation. "With each attempt, we refine our palate," she responded, her voice brimming with passion. "It's about experimentation. Just like the journey I embarked upon, your evolution will have bumps, thrilling discoveries, and some failures. Give yourself permission to explore. We can build our own versions of health." The session concluded amid praises for both the recipes and the engaging dialogue. Joan was on a high, feeling a solid sense of accomplishment as hearts and likes flooded her feed. Each message of gratitude fed her growing confidence. This was her space, and she had crafted it meticulously, both for herself and her audience. Sitting back in her chair after signing off, Joan recognized the gravity of her journey. She had achieved a deep understanding of balance, not just in culinary endeavors, but within her core beliefs. This was her achievement. She had transformed doubt into empowerment. Her life's narrative had shifted. No longer was she the solely traditional grandmother bound by decades-old habits. She was a harbinger of healthy living, ready to embrace the evolving landscape of her culinary legacy while embracing change without fear. Now, she stood on the cusp of her next chapter, reveling in a renewed purpose. She would pursue more live interactions, drawing inspiration from her community, reinforcing this newfound connection with authenticity. Maybe she would even write a book, an encapsulation of her discoveries, with recipes not just for food, but for living joyfully and healthily at any age. As she gazed out the window, a smile spread across her face. She had conquered her fears, transformed her capabilities, and stepped confidently into the spotlight of her own life. In the reflection of her kitchen window, she saw not just a leader for nutrition, but a woman who had rediscovered her worth, an identity empowered by healthy choices, resilience, and the willingness to embrace change. It was time to continue this journey, and deep within her heart, Joan felt ready to share her story, inviting others to join her on the path toward health and self-acceptance. Now is your moment to transform your own narrative. Discover how change can lead to empowerment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Now's the time to support each other in the journey toward a healthier life.